Welcome back, Rosebuds. Let's play a little game. It's called the Game of Stories. Today, I'll tell you a batch of stories. All are true, except for one work of creative fiction. Make sure to listen all the way to the end, where I'll reveal the imposter fake. With that, let's dive into our 4 creepy attic ghost stories to tell in the dark. Story number 1. I can't believe what we found in the attic. This happened a little while ago, and I didn't know about this sub, but here I am telling my story. My brother was living down the road from us in an old farmhouse in North New Jersey. This house was the same time period as ours, around late 1700s, early 1800s. Can't remember the exact date, but that house was about as haunted as anything I've ever experienced. What we found in the attic still gives me chills. I'm getting ahead of myself though. I'll get to that in a moment. The whole town we lived in is old and historic. Anyway, this house he used to live in has a driveway that sits over a bridge with a tiny creek. And then the property has a bunch of fields and forests. Actually really pretty. His house was a 3-minute walk from my house. At this time, my niece was a tiny toddler, and they lived with us before moving into this house. She was always doing creepy things, like pointing at the ceiling corner and laughing and talking to no one. I can't remember all the things she did, but I remember that it distinctly felt as if she could see things we couldn't. It went beyond just the imaginary friend thing little kids do. So my brother is living alone in this house with his daughter. He would call me at night saying that him and my niece were hearing weird noises from the attic. He'd investigate, find nothing, get creeped out, and call asking to stay at our house. He never went into the attic though, just near the opening door. That's an important detail for later. So he comes over, then something strange happened. At our house, on our landline, we got a phone call from our own landline number. My mom picked it up confused and immediately put it on speaker so we could all hear it. It went on for like 5 minutes. It was the sound of deep, heavy breathing and panting. Scared us like mad. This was back when cell phones were just up and coming, so my brother got his phone out and recorded it. It was like an old flip phone or something. It's gone now, but we used to play it all the time on stereo speakers. It became sort of a running joke. It was actually kind of funny. Wish I still had that recording today. Anyways, his house had a barn like ours, and one day he said he got home and saw a person standing in front of his barn staring at him. But the person immediately struck him as strange because he was wearing a full regalia military uniform, and it looked old. At first he thought it was some weirdo reenactment person out there, but then the person vanished. It became apparent it wasn't a living person trespassing. He said that probably would have been the better scenario. Then there was that attic. It always had jangling, shuffling, and even banging noises coming from it. My mom said it was probably old pipes. One day I was over and I suggested we inspect the room a little closer, rule out if it was a pipe or not. I mean, there weren't any pipes in the attic, but whatever. It was Mom's go-to explanation. We found a way to get to the attic door. It struck me as odd that it was as if it was sealed up, but not quite. It wasn't really a pull-down door either. We needed a ladder. When we got up there, I'm not kidding when I say both of us almost had aneurysms because of what we found. It was terrifying. We found a human-sized steel cage with an old chair inside. The chains connected the chair to the cage so it was suspended. I think what we must have been hearing was the chains rattling, but the strange thing was, there wasn't any sort of draft up there. The attic was pretty dark, no windows, so obviously horrifying to see this by the measly flashlight beams we had focused on this contraption. I immediately thought, what the? Just why? What was this being used for? There was other weird stuff up there too. Not as strange as the iron cage with the chair, but old empty glass bottles and jugs, like really old. Also some old-fashioned tools hanging on the wall. If we cared to pull them down and analyze them, they might have been worth something at an antique shop. However, we noped out of there really quick and never went back up again. Needless to say, my brother didn't stay at that house very long afterwards. Story number 2, Ghost or Glitch. I remember that night well because it was scorching hot. I was lying in bed feeling miserable with the oppressive heat. I couldn't seem to get comfortable no matter how much I tossed and turned, and my clothes felt like they were sticking to my skin. That's when I heard a strange tapping sound coming from the ceiling above me. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it. It was an old house, and I figured it was just some boxes settling in the attic, or an animal running around. But then the tapping became more persistent and louder, like something was trying to get my attention. I hated that attic, but in addition to the temperature, now this incessant tapping noise would not stop. I didn't really want to get up, but seeing as I wasn't going to get any sleep from the heat, I might as well get up and investigate. So I got up and made my way to the attic. I was fully bracing myself for a raccoon or a rat to scurry by, but what I saw was much more terrifying. I caught the glimpse of an apparition of a little girl sitting on the floor, far on the other side of the room, seemingly lost in her own little world playing a game. I froze, not sure what to do. I didn't want to draw its attention to me, but at the same time, I wanted to get out of there, and fast. She was very focused on her game. She was definitely like an apparition because the colors of her skin and clothes were kind of muted, and there was a transparency to the scene. Because I was frozen in place, just staring at this thing, I noticed something really weird. It was like a glitch in the Matrix or something. I think she might have been playing jacks, but the motion she was making was like a record skipping, or a GIF just repeating over and over. I slowly crept backward toward the attic door and left. I went down to my kitchen to get a glass of water and realized I was shaking. I knew I wouldn't be able to get to sleep, but I went back to lay down in my bed anyway. I noticed immediately the tapping sound was gone now. The house is old, and I was curious about the history, wondering if a child had passed away there at some point. If I had to place the era of the ghost's clothing, I'd say maybe 50s? I'm not sure what that was. A ghost? A glitch in time? Whatever it was, it never happened again. But I'll never forget the one time I had a pretty intense paranormal experience. Honestly, I'm okay with it being a one-time experience. Story number 3, The Wild-Haired Woman. A few years back when I was younger and I'd hang out with my friends, we liked to walk far away from our town and go on adventures. One day we decided to camp and go farther and farther each day until we reached an abandoned house. It had 2 floors and an attic. We went in for a joke, but the real motive? We were looking for expensive stuff we could hawk at our local pawn shop. We were always joking about finding gold or valuable antiques and becoming rich. Looking back, we were stupid, but hey, that's how teenagers are. We poked around by ourselves and then met up on the 2nd floor. Just as we were meeting up, we heard running upstairs. We all looked at each other to make sure no one was missing. All 4 of us were within eyeshot of each other. At this point, we were getting pretty scared. Each of us picked up items such as broken sticks, rusty pipes, or rocks to use as weapons. Yeah, instead of leaving, we thought we'd check out each room slowly and quietly to find out who was in the house with us. One of my friends heard breathing and shuffling. We realized it was near this closet. As we got closer, we could tell it was definitely in the closet. We opened the door and the breathing stopped. There was nothing but a tight closet that a person could not have easily fit inside. Not only was it too small, it was stuffed with random junk. Suddenly we heard running downstairs. We all rushed downstairs to see who it was, but again, there was nothing. We tried to convince ourselves that it was probably just a rat or something. It was starting to get dark, and we were about to leave. Then we realized we hadn't checked the attic. We all turned around to look at a window that was on the attic floor. What we saw made us freeze. There was a woman with a pale face, ripped clothes, and crazy wild hair staring down at us. For a moment, she just looked at us, and we looked at her. Then, all of a sudden, she screamed so loud that it echoed through the trees. We all ran faster than anything. We didn't stop until we were well away from that house. Our camp had been pretty close to that house. We didn't care that it was dark now. We picked up and camped far away. It took some time to settle down, but we made food and went to sleep. When we woke up, we all felt like something was watching us. One of us even said that they thought they heard someone walking around the tents the previous night. We got up and quickly packed. At this point, we decided it was time to head home. Our adventure hadn't turned out the way we wanted, and we were all feeling pretty spooked. As we continued on, we got quieter as we knew we were approaching the abandoned house. We were terrified and silent as we walked by. We didn't even look at it. Suddenly, we heard knocking and banging noises coming from the house. We took off running. Later, one of the friends in the group said they looked back and saw the woman with the torn clothes and wild hair again. You'd think this would be the end of the story, but no. I'm sure you're thinking it was probably a homeless person living there. Honestly, as scary as the woman was, that's what my friends and I thought as well. But that was just the beginning of the horror. After that day, strange things started happening to me. I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweating and trembling, feeling like I was being watched. I started seeing the woman in my dreams, her hair matted with red droplets, her eyes empty and lifeless. But the worst part was when I started hearing her voice in my head, whispering to me in a language I couldn't understand. It was like she was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't make out what it was. I tried to ignore it and convince myself that it was just my imagination, but the more I tried to push it away, the stronger it got. I started feeling like I was losing my mind. I became paranoid and anxious all the time. Every shadow, every sound made me jump, and there was no rational explanation for this. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to go back to the abandoned house and try to confront my fears. I don't know what I was thinking or hoping for, but I felt like I was being haunted by this woman from the house, and I just wanted it to stop. I guess maybe I also wanted to prove to myself that maybe it was all in my mind. As I approached the house, I started hyperventilating and questioning my judgment that I probably should have brought a friend with me. But I hadn't told them about what I was experiencing. For all I knew, they were having the same issues, but we weren't telling each other. The door was open, and it was dead quiet. It was daytime, and this made it easier. I went through each room, purposefully avoiding the attic. Then I took a deep breath and made my way up there, bracing myself that I'd see the woman again. She wasn't there. I had that overwhelming feeling again, like I was being watched. I steadied myself and waited. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Then I said out loud, "Leave me alone. You belong here, and you need to leave me alone. I'm going to leave, and you won't follow me this time." I don't even know what compelled me to do that. Intuition? An otherworldly spirit guide? I felt silly saying it. It was almost like it wasn't me. After I made this declaration, I ran out of there feeling that intense being watched feeling more than ever. But after that, the dream stopped, and I didn't see or hear the woman anymore. I stopped feeling like I was being watched. It's been many years since that happened, and I sometimes think it was all in my head. But there's also another part of me that says, I don't think so. Story number 4, Good Ghost. When I was a kid, visiting my aunt's house was always a scary experience. There was a spirit there I could actually see. Even though I was way too young to watch scary movies, a drenched man who looked like he'd just come out of a lake or something would slip from the shadows and just stare at me whenever I visited my aunt. I would complain to my mother about it, but she would cover my mouth to stop me from speaking. It made me angry that I couldn't talk about what I was seeing. One day I called out to the drenched man that I somehow knew was Harold and asked him to stop breaking things because it made my aunt sad. Surprisingly, he did stop. Later, when I told my mother why the damage had stopped, she told me to never say the name Harold again. I was confused, but did as she asked and decided to call him Herman instead. Years went by, and Herman the Ghost became a regular thing for family gatherings. He would give us kids a lot of scary thrills with unexplained sounds, things moving around, and the locked attic light would turn on by itself. It was seriously scary, but felt like all in good humor. Herman was fun for us, and we saw him as a good ghost. It wasn't until I became an adult that I learned the truth about my aunt's house. My uncle had died in a drowning accident when I was a baby. His name wasn't Herman, it was Harold. My mom had introduced us to the kind lies to spare her sister from added grief. Apparently, my uncle's demise was a complicated effect of the Second World War and some PTSD. He'd fallen off a boat while fishing in the small pond behind their house. He'd hit the bottle a little too much, passed out, and fell overboard. The whole thing had garnered a great deal of attention. I didn't like that my mother lied to us, but as an adult, I understood why she did. Well, Rosebuds, did you guess which one was our fake ghostly encounter? Before I do our reveal, don't forget to give us a quick thumbs up. And if you enjoyed this game of stories, why not share it with a friend? Better yet, subscribe, and when the next episode comes up, play the game with your friends. See who's better at guessing the fake fictional story. All right, the moment you've been waiting for, our imposter story reveal. Today's fictional story was story number 2, Ghost or Glitch. The story about the person who couldn't sleep and saw the apparition of the little girl playing in the corner of the attic. That's a wrap, Rosebuds. Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care and stay creepy.